high school teacher.
Oh,
I'm a
excellent.
high school teacher. Some could, say it's similar.
Yeah, probably. It's still the nurturing aspect.
Yes.
Hello, Crystal. How are you? It's been a long time. The microphone pops on and off.
Yeah, hello. I'm sorry, I had it on mute. Hi, Damon. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing fine. How's everybody doing?
Doing good. How are you, Crystal?
I'm doing well. Happy to be
I'm so
here. I'm
glad
just
you could make
listening.
it. So awesome.
Thank you for
I'm so glad
inviting
you
me.
joined us. Yeah, of course. I'm so excited.
Me too.
You're
There's
always
I'm
Jasmine.
welcome.
listening.
You can consider yourself always invited, Crystal. It's always lovely to have you. I love your energy in these groups.
Thank you.
One of the
Happy
things I
to
really
be
like
here.
about you is you're fearless. When you don't know something, you always say. And I think having somebody like that in a group really makes other people more comfortable and more relaxed about asking things they're not comfortable, or, it gives people courage, which I like. That's a really, really lovely trait you've got. You're fearless in that regard. So it's always good to have you.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm very happy to be here. I just want to listen and see how this is done, because I told you I'll be all over the place when I'm giving it. By the time I'm finished, the person is more confused before they came in, because I get to talk and I go everywhere. I just be going.
I've been reading your
I'm glad I
debriefs
get to
in the
hear this.
group. Yeah.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, if they live to be 200 though, and they go back over that old chart, they'll probably realize that 80% of it happened,
Yeah.
They just got it all
Right.
at once. Hello, Jasmine. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you guys?
Good, thank you. You're in the dark. You're lurking like a ninja.
It's actually not that dark in here, but my laptop's really old, so it looks
Okay.
darker than what it is.
Sure. No worries. We were just having a chat about this chart. And this is well, maybe Michael, and you could give everybody just a little background about where we are right at this moment with this chart and with Beth and what we've learned this morning.
So she has let us in on a little bit. She said she was letting Damien know that she's lost 250 something pounds. She's a high school teacher. She's got a sister named Nancy, who's a hospice nurse. She's a widow. She lost her husband about, I guess, how long ago now? 13 years ago now. She's she's great. Everybody loves her. All the kids at the schools love her. She's definitely got the Cancer sun vibes. She's very loving and caring, and all that stuff. You can look at her chart and it just jumps right out at me as I'm speaking. But basically, she does have an Aquarius rising. She's very intelligent. She's very smart. She writes curriculum, and she does judging for.
It's called DECA, which is for marketing students. It's the competitive events program, kind of like if you've ever heard of FBLA for business ed kids.
Okay.
Yeah, so she's got her finger in a lot of pies. She's
great.
And I'm retired, but I'm subbing.
So she is retired, but she still works every single day.
Fantastic.
Oh, and she has a dog named Abby. Let me tell you that. She's a poodle. We got her 2 years ago. She's a standard poodle, and that's her companion.
Fantastic. Okay, now just
Hey,
add into that. Sorry, go.
I'm sorry. I got one
You're right.
question. Did you say something about judging?
I judge for state and international DECA. It's competitive events for kids where they have to do the one I judge most often. They have a 20-page paper they present based on a business topic, and it's a 20-minute interview in front of the judge.
That's crazy, because when I seen it, I thought about judging. Anytime I see Scorpio, I think of Judge Judy. Because one day I was watching her, and the way she digs for information, I said she has to be a Scorpio. So I looked her up. So immediately when I seen it in your chart, I said, I wonder if this has anything to do with judging. So that's interesting.
I thoroughly enjoy it. And with teenagers, you are digging out information. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's good to know. All right, I'm back listening.
That's going to synergize really nicely with that Aquarius too. Aquarius
Mhm.
ascendant. Yeah, lovely. Okay.
Okay.
Now, just one other interesting thing that came up this morning. It's a puzzle that Michael and I have been trying to unpack. She sent this chart to everybody in time passages earlier in the week, or this is the one that was posted up on the Facebook group. But then when we take it into Solarfire, we get a completely different shooting match right here. We've gone through everything. We've tried to figure out where the differences have come up, and we just cannot. But interestingly enough, when I brought this chart up, Michael, and felt straight away that this is probably a more accurate fit. So apologies in advance for anybody who really drilled down on that old chart, the previous chart that we had, the time passages one. But I think today we're probably going to look at this a little more. Just out of curiosity, we'll probably stick with equal house, but this is what it looks like in Placidus. So we get a little bit more moving over into the 5th house as well. But when we look at it in equal, we get this lovely stellium happening here in the 6th house. Just some data here. In terms of sign balance, we've got Cancer. It's got 5 points because the sun's in there, because this is a bucket chart, and that Mercury is the lead planet. Not a bucket chart, sorry, a bowl chart. And that Mercury is the lead planet. So just given that a little bit of extra weighting there. We've got a ton in Leo. And something I read a long time ago, I can't remember where it was, talks about how Cancer has Leo envy. So we've kind of satisfied that criteria here with this chart. It's got a heavy balance of both. We've also got a very strong Libra happening in this chart too. So that's just a little breakdown there. And obviously Scorpio is just riding underneath that. So as Crystal picked up, we've got some very powerful Scorpio vibes coming through this chart. Now, in terms of elemental balance, we've got 8 points in water, we've got 7 in fire, we have 7 in air, but we have 1 in earth. So we're strong in all elements except earth. So that obviously will have a very interesting effect on this chart and the person's makeup. In terms of modality, we have a ton of fixed energy. We have a ton of cardinal energy, but we have very little mutable energy there in the chart too. So that's indicative of strength. There's definite strength in there, and lots of it. So it'll be interesting to see as we go on how that plays out on this chart as well. And again, too, like I said, after we ran this through Solarfire, we had this very powerful stellium come up in the 6th house. So I'm guessing whatever you've been looking at for the last few days, this has kind of put a different spin on it, I guess. So that's kind of where we've landed today. Does anybody have any thoughts on that? Anybody have any ideas why we might have a deviation on this? Like I said, for the last hour, we've been trying to unpack this and figure out why there's such a difference. The only thing we saw was, I think, time passages rounds off its global coordinates, while Solarfire is right down to, you know, the absolute wire there. But when I ran the rounded data into Solarfire, we still got the same result. It didn't change anything. So yeah, that's the chart we've got today. Does anybody have anything to say? Anybody notice any obvious, I mean, there's an obvious visual difference to the chart and everything's moved off to the 6th house a lot more, but I'm hoping this isn't going to be too disruptive for anybody who's come in today. No? Okay. All right, cool. Well, this is the chart we're going to be working with today. So where are we going to start here? I mean, for me, the temptation is to jump straight into that big stellium sitting right there, but we've already had some very interesting feedback on this Scorpio stuff happening at the start of the top of the chart too. So where do you guys want to start? What do you think?
I like to start with the pattern of the chart, like the fact that she has a lot of planets, a lot of action on the west side of the chart and the top part of the chart. So it kind of tells me that maybe she may be more interested in relationships and more like in the social aspect. I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but she's not really a introverted person, or she doesn't really she's not really more self-focused. She was more focused on others and what they might think. Is that true, or am I reaching?
No,
No,
you
you're
are
dead on.
you are hitting the nail on the head. That is exactly right.
Okay.
And so what her question is, Crystal, what she's wanting to learn or what she's wanting to find out is she's interested in her relationship. So what you just said is exactly how she is. That's her personality. And she's at the point in her life now where she's interested in relationships. She wants to kind of know where she should head in that direction.
Do I need to be?
Oh, okay.
Just to clarify,
Ooh.
when you say relationships, sorry, I'm going to jump in, Crystal. Are you talking intimate relationships? Are you talking relationships with people in general?
Intimate relationships.
Okay.
And
Well, she's got relationships with people in general. There's no problem there. The problem is, it's hard to find a man as as good enough. Let's just put it on out there. She's wondering if she should just stop looking. We've got this dog that we got a couple of years ago.
my dog and I be happy to be by ourselves and just say that's the way it's going to be, and find groups and activities that are going to occupy me? Or is there an opportunity for companionship, love, all of the above? I may be 65, but I'm not dead.
Okay, well, I see your moon in Libra. So that tells me that you're going to have emotional connection with relationships. And that might be something that you need emotionally. It's like, I know usually when you got a Libra going on in your chart, you're learning things through relationships. So, but what you have in Pluto in your seventh house, I would say you're going to go through destruction, and you might go through a lot of ups and downs in order to get to in order to get where you want to be. I know it's about like breaking down and out with the old and in with the new, and it's in Leo, and Leo it's all about me. And then you got water and fire. I wouldn't say stop. I don't think you can if you wanted to, because I think emotionally that's what you need, because your moon is Libra.
Okay, now just
Agreed.
for the tail of the tape here, because somebody's going to ask when we post this video, how did you make that connection? I myself, I can see how you did it, but can you just let people know how you connected that Pluto up to that Libra moon up the top there? Are you just referencing it in terms of it being in the seventh house?
Oh, yes, because the Pluto's in the seventh house.
Yep.
And I know Pluto's about again, it's about rebuilding, it's destruction. Like they say, you have to die before you're reborn. And with it being in the seventh house, if you're having relationships like that, if with that being in your seventh house, it would seem like that would be your relationships. But with your Libra moon, and it's in the eighth house, so that's like other people. It's focused on resources. It's a deeper intimacy as well. So you have it in your eighth house and you have it in Libra. So I think this is something that you emotionally might need because of the eighth house, the Libra, and the moon all together. Now, as far as it being in Libra, I mean Leo, your Pluto being in Leo, Leo is all about attention. It's all about me. It has to be about me. So I think it would be kind of hard to write off a relationship with your intense Pluto and your confident, I need attention Leo, and your emotional moon and your relationship and your Libra, which is relationships, it's partnerships, and it's in the eighth house as well. So that's on the deeper level. Like your relationship is your level, your business or partnerships. But when you get to the eighth house, it kind of spins off the seventh house, but it's on the deeper level of intimacy. It's going deep. It's like you're digging deep. So I don't know if giving up on relationships would be a good idea. I don't know. That's where I gotta stop, because that's as good as I can get right now. That's just what I see looking at the seventh house in the and then you got the 11th house. There's nothing there, and that's like aspirations. That is, I don't know. Somebody help me here.
When it's Pluto, it's going to happen whether you want it or not. And it's going to happen the way that it's supposed to happen or not. But it's external. You know what I mean? Pluto's transformation. It's transformation that rolls right over the top of you. And it's this type of transformation you don't really have any say in the matter. It's going to happen the way that it's going to happen, and the value of the experience is how you unpack it after it. Everything's done, or while it's happening, you must change and grow to accommodate that. And it's interesting because, like Crystal's pointed out, you've got a Western Hemisphere chart, but also the way that you interact with other people too is very it's based on values. It's based on fairness, equality, empathy to others too. So this Leo, when it asserts itself, it's powerful, and it's, in a way, I guess it's different energy to what the rest of the chart is saying. So I can see where you're coming from, Crystal. Does anybody else want to add to that? Because that's a lot of information just straight up before we've even really got right into it.
You see how I do? I keep going to going.
Yeah. No, that's great. You're on point. Yeah, you're on point.
Yeah.
Well,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, my sense when she mentioned the relationships is that she couldn't keep herself out of a relationship, even if she wanted to, like that just in a different way than Crystal was going, but because of all that Leo passion, and that's what I was actually thinking, the Leo need for passion and to be, you know, kind of in a community. Plus the Scorpio depth, I keep coming back to that Scorpio depth. She's not going to be satisfied with anything other than a deep relationship. And so she can get that from her friendships. She can get that from her pet for sure. But I'm not sure that she's going to be able to be settled in that. There's always going to be one of that drive. And I don't think, just on a more general level, I don't think anyone should ever give up on love. That's just my basic premise is it can show up at any time. And to Damien's point about the Pluto, I wonder if the Pluto already did its thing. You had a husband that passed. I mean, I don't know if Pluto is just like a repeat offender, or if sometimes it's just one thing that's going to hit you, and then you live through it and you kind of learn, and beyond is going to get better. But I still think just the general of, I wouldn't give up on love relationship.
You know, I agree with you with that, because look, it's squared Saturn, and Saturn is in retrograde. And I know that is like going backwards, right? Saturn is like, you may be attracted to older people, or I mean older men or women, I don't know. Or maybe you're not. I don't understand what it's meaning with the square right now, but the fact that she said it's something that you might continue going through, being that it's square Saturn. Let me see, that would be transformation, and Saturn would be like obstruction, restriction. Yeah, so maybe it is some restriction and destruction going there. I mean, I don't know if the aspect is separating or applying. And I think if it's separating, that means it's already passed. And if it's applying, being on the exact time of it, you'll know if it's come to pass or not. I'm still learning how to read the exact and applying and the separate, but I know that has something to do with whether it's happened or it's going to happen or it's close. If that makes sense.
It does. I think getting back to just adding to what Crystal said about getting back to what Michelle said, I think if you're really going to understand the way that Pluto is applying, that Leo that it's in is ruling the 6th house. So it's connected to that stellium down the bottom there. And I think that's got a lot to do with the puzzle of how we interpret the way Pluto is going to impact, because it's going to impact on a day-to-day level. It's going to, and you know, Leo in the 6th house is a puzzle in itself. You know, how does that carry itself? And then on top of that, we've got Cancerian energy. These two energies are pretty much opposed. And this is all happening in the 6th house. We've got a person who's, there's a sense of grandeur, and there's this, you know, there's the withdrawal and the softness of Cancer all happening in the 6th house. And it's interesting that you talked about how much weight you'd lost in the 6th house and things like that. There's an interesting story, I think, still being waiting to be told about that stellium, and I think it's going to have a big impact on that 7th house. That square that you pointed out, Crystal, at the most simplistic level, when you're looking at Pluto and Saturn, the two great malefics in square to each other. You know, at the most simplistic level, it just says that there's a block between relationships and career. I mean, you know, if you simplify right down and look, that's one way that it's applying, you know. So, I mean, that's just some thoughts there that might kick some things off.
Yeah, I would agree. It's interesting because you said it's connected to the 6th house too. So it'd be that has something to do with daily routine and work and stuff too, right?
Yeah. And they're
So
all
the 6 to
trining.
10.
There's some strong trines running from the sixth house up to that Saturn up the top there. So that's either alleviating the pressure of that square
Right.
between Saturn and Pluto, or it's fueling one at the detriment of the other.
I agree. Oh,
What are your thoughts, Jasmine? Curious to hear what your thoughts are. You always have something.
So when somebody had mentioned the passing, I was looking at the Jupiter in the eighth house. Doesn't Jupiter in the eighth, well, doesn't Jupiter represent like somebody's husband?
Can, definitely.
That's what I was looking at. I don't know what else to say.
No, okay, cool. That's definitely a consideration there too. Yeah, that shed some light as well.
And that is a good observation, Jasmine, because her husband would have been in the eighth house. If you know what I mean? Like that it was that, it would have been, your observation is right on point because of his work relation. Like he worked a lot. In other words, his career was
Appraiser.
he was an appraiser, so he was gone a lot. And so there was, I guess you could say, there wasn't as much time together as you would want as a married couple. You know what I mean? So that's a very good observation. And it's over there next to the moon too, which represents our emotional self, you know, what we crave and what we desire. So I think that definitely does represent him. And I think the Pluto is, in my opinion, something that has already happened. And then the Jupiter, like Jasmine just said, gives me the idea that it was her husband. So those two, that connects for me.
I'm sorry, I hung up by accident.
That's all right. That's all right. You've got a really interesting pattern. When we go back to this eighth house here, you've got a quincunx running from Mercury, the lead planet for that bowl chart, off to your ascendant. And you've got a square running up to the moon, which is a trine running down to the ascendant. And that, for me, especially when you've got powerful hitters like those, you know, you've got a lead planet on the chart, and then you've got one of the big three up there, and sitting in that pattern. Quincunx is adjustment. It's about making adjustments in the person's life. And when you often when there's a quincunx, you get that pattern. You've got a trine and a square running off to another planet, and that tells you where exactly the finer tuned way that pattern is going to play out there. So if we're looking at the way the emotions and everything tunes out and is happening in the chart, it's leaning off to Aquarius and it's squaring off to Mercury. So if we connect that back up to what Crystal was talking about at the beginning, making connections and relationships and so on, it suggests that the qualities of Aquarius perhaps may be more positive and more nurturing to that energy on the chart than what's happening in the sixth house, that communication can be an impediment to it, especially the way that Cancerians communicate, which is guarded and careful and secretive and protective. And things like that. And maybe it is about being out in the world more, about being more social. You know, there's different kinds of love, and you know, this doesn't help when you're talking about intimate relationships because Aquarius is pretty even and fair-minded when it comes to everybody. They'll take everybody at face value. But I think that may at least give us some understanding on how to get more from that moon. The Pluto naturally rules the eighth house anyway too. So I mean, there's that connection there. There's another connection on top of that. But I just thought I'd throw that pattern in. Whenever I see that pattern, especially from a karmic point of view, that's a fine-tuning pattern. When we talk about the moon as representative of negative habits, of past life stuff that's coming in, when you get that pattern down there, that tells us about what lessons we've learned in past lives and what abilities and skills and insights that we've learned in past lives that are valuable in this life and which ones to disregard. And that's always the challenge with the moon from an esoteric point of view. So being secretive, being guarded, being careful with what you say, being defensive with what you say, is going to be an impediment to everything you're trying to achieve and trying to do in this lifetime. And those Aquarian qualities are going to carry you through. And that again points off to, we've got rulership here, at least up in your career, but we've also got Uranus down there as 6th house in Leo too. So these Leo gregarious qualities and things like that, being more outgoing, being Leo at the esoteric level is about having the power and the presence to enable others, not just yourself, as being the lioness for other people as well. And it sounds like you've got no problem doing that. You always have been. And I'm guessing that's the side of you that your students are really connecting to. And it's very prominent on your chart. You've got a Western Hemisphere chart, but a lot of the way that you interact with other people is again based on a sense of fairness and a sense of making yourself available to others. So it's nice that you've been given enough Leo energy on the chart to prioritize yourself too, and to take care of your own needs in there. But it's going to be a very, very challenging thing to integrate into this kind of chart, because your chart, you're eternally available to other people. So I guess that can be a bit of a juggling act for you. Looking at your career, maybe one way to interpret the square running off from Saturn and Leo, this Leo Pluto on the in the 8th house might be just, you're so good at one thing, it may be intimidating for people when it comes to the other. So just, okay, I saw a reaction there when I said that.
I have been told I'm intimidating to other teachers.
Yep. Yeah, and I can see it. Yeah. Okay. I just thought I'd throw that out there, because we started by looking at that quincunx pattern down there with the trine and the square, and that's pointing off to the moon. So we've got some fine tuning to do with how we communicate, especially at an emotional level. And if you can figure that out, that's going to be transformative for you. There are some habits that are lurking around that are going to make this whole thing very, very difficult for you. And having said that, we still haven't even really scratched on the surface of that stellium in the 6th house. And I think we established earlier, we're going to need to do that to understand and solve that final puzzle of how that Pluto is playing out in the 7th house. But that's at least given us a little bit of insight about that Saturn up there in the 10th house and that Pluto down there in the 7th house too. We've got a square there. The better you are at being by yourself, and with small animals, with your little dog and things like that, the more you're going to distance yourself from the possibility of intimate relationships. Something you already know, but I'm just telling you, it's built into your chart by design. It's whoever your programmer was, they built a function in there to make sure that that happens exactly that way. It is going to be one or the other. The thing is, where you're lucky is when Pluto decides it's time for Pluto to do its thing, it's going to do it. Whether you like it or not, it's going to happen. So, and when I look at that intuitively, which as a reader, and an Aquarius, I'm generally quite cautious to do. I think when you get a fail safe like that, when you've got a planet like Pluto, maybe you are very, very good at being by yourself. So there's a back door that's always left open for a higher authority to come through and read the riot act when it comes to relationships and things like that. And that's Pluto. Pluto doesn't really care what your plans are. It's going to do its thing. So just that's very, very verbose expansion on that one little pattern down the bottom there. But I just thought I'd throw that out into the group, and maybe that can start leading us into the stellium in the 6th house, because we've already picked up on some points. And this lovely little poodle that you've got is very prominent in that pattern. So there's a little universe in itself you can lose yourself in right there. We've established that health is a consideration as well. That you did have a partner, a husband, but he traveled a lot, so he wasn't necessarily available. So you may be very, very good at being by yourself. Your day-to-day routine, you've got a lot of Leo and a lot of Cancer in there, and in their own way, they're very, very strong. So we've got all these planets, these personal planets, and we've also got Uranus in there, which likes to shake it up. That mean that you can potentially entertain yourself endlessly if left to your own devices. So that's at least a lead into the stellium. What are other people's thoughts?
I got a question about this Pluto right here. When it comes to relationships, are you possessive or jealous?
I try not to be because in my experiences from high school, I was always the extra. I was never the most important one. And even in my marriage at times, I felt like he was emotionally unavailable. Not just
Got
that
you.
he was not at home a lot, but he was also very emotionally unavailable a lot of times. But we were married 28 years and we knew each other from 14 years old.
Understood. Okay, because I was trying to see if the Pluto made you like more a private person and maybe more laid back or possessive or jealous. I've been trying to study this whole Pluto thing because I know my sister had a real issue with jealousy and stuff. And when I was looking up Pluto or Mars, I believe. Or do you feel competitive at work, in the workplace?
Oh, I am extremely competitive. I had to overcome fat girl syndrome. I had to do everything twice as well as that skinny blonde next to me.
Got you.
Current skinny blonde excuse. But no, I always.
She's not talking about me, y'all.
No, but I always had to do more. I had to do better. You know, I had to make myself shine to be recognized. Where if somebody else just did a little bit, they got all the recognition and the shine. And it was all I was always climbing uphill. And same thing in romantic relationships. I don't ever feel like I'm worthy, nor do I feel like I've ever had somebody focus wholly, totally on me.
Understood. That would explain for me the Leo. I mean, the Mars and Leo, right around your fifth and your your sixth and your seventh house. Because
Would
Leo,
that
want to be confident. Huh?
Would that explain the Saturn square Pluto too? Because isn't
Perfectly.
Saturn like blockages sometimes?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yes, ma'am. I would say that.
Perfectly.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Can I ask a personal question? Have you always, the weight that you lost, were you always carrying it? Did it, were you from a young age? It's always been there?
Yes. I
Okay.
came out of my mama that way. When I graduated high school, I was 229 and a half, went through all the weight loss, everything. But it never stopped me. I always had the attitude that I was me, take me or leave me. If you don't care for me, then there's the door. And it was to a point the way I thought, but it was also my armor. I never had but one true boyfriend, and even then the mom didn't like me. So went to college, did my 4 years of college, same attitude, take me or leave me. And I learned how to come out of my shell more. And at my biggest, I had to drop about 40 pounds. So I would say at my biggest weight, I was somewhere between 370, 390. And when I lost my husband, that was the weight I was at, and then went through gastric bypass. But I've always been a big girl. I sold big girl clothes when I worked part-time to other big girls. But that big girl syndrome stays with you, and that big girl mentality stays with you. And that feeling of never quite being as good as that person sitting next to me.
Well, you used an interesting point when you talked about it. You said that you wore it like an armor at one point. I heard that correctly, yeah? Which is a really, really interesting way to bundle that all up because, God, Leo of all the signs is probably one of the most sensitive, but it's also the one that needs attention the most too. So when you use a phrase like that, maybe that's a way of rationalizing distance from people, if that makes sense. That you wear your weight like an armor, take me or leave me. I mean, you've got Pluto there, so that's a signal of leaving anyway, straight up from the go-get. That's a door. So I guess that brings me to the question now. Why now? Is it just loneliness that you're looking for a partner? What's motivating you now? You've lost all this weight. Are we doing a reboot here? Are we starting from zero and coming at this from a completely different way? You've always approached relationships before. Because, like I said, in that 6th house, you've got everything there to have a party of one that could last a lifetime. With the RSVP for a very small dog. And it's very interesting that you mentioned that weight can also be an armor too. Yes, it can. Why now? Why are you interested in a relationship now? Is it just loneliness? You just want the company? Because I can't see somebody like you not having people in your life.
I have people. It is loneliness. It's wanting company, loneliness, comfort. I'm looking for something I did not get in my marriage. I feel like we were married 28 years, but there was something very definitely missing. I was raised old fashioned, if you're in it for a penny, you're in it for a pound.
Right.
I was the income. I was the one that got things done. I wore the pants in the house. He didn't enjoy working. He was the sweetest person in the world, but he didn't like to work. He never took care of me in the way a husband should take care of a wife. So I keep thinking that I missed something. And I would like to find that something. I'm good with people. I enjoy people, but I do need that. Maybe I'm also looking for validation in a sense. I see people that have gone through transformations like I have, that everything just falls in place. Mine hasn't fallen in place. Yes, I think I am rebooting. Over time, I've gone from apologizing for who I am to being proud of who I am. And going back to that, love me or leave me type thing. But I feel like I'm missing an element in my life. My sister is a workaholic. I moved here that we could do things together. That's not happening. And so many of my friends are married with families, and I am single, no children. Makes the difference socially too.
Okay. Just another question too. Do you feel in order to be in a relationship, you may have to compromise something? A part of your personality you may have to be more careful and more cautious with than you may have been before. Is that an element of where you're at now, or do you just let the pieces fall where they may? When I say compromise too, sorry, let me just refine that word. When I say compromise, I don't necessarily mean give up. I mean, do you feel you may need to make an adjustment? Because we're talking about two different people when we explore this chart. We've got this absolutely ferocious, competitive, dominant person up in the 10th house. And then we've got this cautious, guarded, and you've got Leo that's expressing itself defensively, which is a really interesting pattern on a chart. So we're talking about two different people here. Are we going to be leaning more towards one or the other? Are we going to be looking at a third personality, something that we've learned through experience and so on as we approach this? Have you thought about that?
I think I need to be less aggressive, but by the same token, I don't need to be passive. I think in the past, my passivity, I guess is the word, being too passive and too accepting of, okay, I'm not worthy of anything but what I'm getting. I need to realize that I have worth and value, but I don't need to be overbearing and aggressive. Maybe there is a little bit of a third person out there that's kind of a mix. That the best of both worlds. But I also have a hard time with somebody. I have a hard time trusting because I don't want to be taken for a ride again.
I think
which is typical what
Once
can
we get to a
happen to
certain
an
point.
older female.
Yeah, Yeah, exactly. It was interesting. We had an interesting parallels with the mirror in the last reading that we did as well. I think you have all your experience, which is a gift in this. I heard an interesting quote last week, which I'd never heard before, and I can't understand why, but somebody said, you have not met all the people in your life yet who will love you. So,
My favorite.
yeah. So that's always something, and that really reinforces what Michelle says. You should never give up on love. The people who are going to love you are still out there. You haven't met them all, not till the day you die, and move on. And then you just start all over again, as far as I'm concerned. But what you're saying, a lot of this, what you're talking about is we're pointing back up to this Libra moon up in the 8th house. And you're looking at a personal transformation that's brought about by other people. People are going to come into your life that are going to allow you to transform. When you've got this powerful, dominant Cancer stuff right at the very, very front of your chart, your armor's pretty thick. You've got quite a well-developed shell around you, and again, too, you've even used the word armor yourself. So we're looking at ways to do that, and again, we're looking at this quincunx pointing off to an Aquarius ascendant. So some of these Aquarian qualities will probably help you immensely in doing that. It's more air, less water, more detachment, less sensitivity, I guess. When you're talking about this potential third person that you may be needing to create, or at least start channeling, I think that's a really good start point for that journey. You've got it all. There's nothing about you that people can't see when they get to know you. Yeah, and you're very forward about who you are. So
exactly.
So whoever you attract, and this is nice because most people, when they meet other people, they meet their ambassador first. You know, their well-behaved version of themselves that's designed to lure people in. You're straight up face value. So
Yeah.
The only mystery about you is that you can actually be shy, I think, and it won't strike anybody that person exists until they are exposed to that. And it sounds like there's quite a lot of armor to get through in order to get there. I've got no doubt that once that person gets to that point and they meet that person, it's going to be one of those moments. Wow, that's amazing. That's actually quite lovable. So just in summary, I think we've talked about, just to summarize what I've said, we've got two people on this chart. We've got this dominant, competitive, powerful, relentless woman who intimidates her co-workers. We've got this defensive person who's quite armored, who, in terms of self-esteem, I think you've, like you said, you wear weight like an armor. In a way, at an extreme, that can be an excuse not to get emotionally connected to other people or to put yourself at risk. You know what I mean? You're married young, so there's a lot of experiences that you have missed out on, and you're aware of that now. But everything for me on this chart seems to keep pointing back to this Libra moon up the top. We're looking at developing a balancing act based on the sum total of your experiences, of things that you've learned and the things that you want. And how to synergize that and bring that together in order to get somewhere on the chart. That, for me, looking at that pattern there, that triangle is the most dominant position on the planet, on the chart, next to that huge stallion there, which we still have barely scratched the surface of. Yeah.
Well, I'm struck too by the fact that she's a Cancer. So I just feel like that Cancers want love. They want to give love, they want to receive love. So that is going to be a drive, even if there's all that other energy that's kind of maybe blocking it. But I think inside of her, she's a love bug. Like, that's the sense that I get, that in the combination of the Leo with the Cancer, it's in some ways it's kind of fighting itself because it's water and air and fire. So she can, but like Damien, you said, she has everything there. So she's got both to work with, and she just might need to temper it a little bit. Know when to use your fire to put yourself out there and be social, and then know when to use your Cancer nurturing, warm-hearted nature. Because I can assure you there's a lot of men who are looking for that. They really want that. So like Damien said, you don't want to show up with your armor on. You want to show up with your Cancer warmth kind of showing. And that might be part of the the challenge for you when you actually start putting yourself out and you're meeting people in that way is to remember to do that, to shine that piece of you, the warmth piece.
Good point.
It's excellent. And just to add to that too, Cancer and Leo are perhaps the two most sensitive signs of the zodiac. While Aquarius generally doesn't care. And maybe that there's something in that too. You know, Aquarius isn't that attached to other people's opinions, to what other people think, you know, other people's judgment and things like that. I had a cousin who was struggling to get married. It was the first relationship she'd had. She was in her 40s. Everybody who knew her knew she really, really wanted it, but she grew up in a very religious, very traditional family. And her fear of what other people might think of the relationship with the gentleman that she was getting involved with was at the beginning more powerful than the benefits of the relationship. And I can't help but wonder, especially with this armor we're talking about, there might be a hint of that. I don't know. But maybe that's something too, maybe not caring so much what other people might think, especially if you're competitive. If you have a metric in your mind that you need to be 100% better than the person that you're competing with constantly at all times, then maybe the opinions of other people might be quite strong in your mind. So just my little bit adding to what Michelle said, which is absolutely on point.
You're very right, very accurate.
Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear that. Is anybody else?
So she needs to balance. The moon in Libra tells us that she needs to balance herself. She doesn't need to be too aggressive or too passive. She needs to create that middle ground. And when she goes out there and puts herself out there, what she has to do to meet someone, we've agreed on that. She doesn't need to, like Michelle says, she needs to
be sweet.
Be sweet. She doesn't need to go out.
Take what you said and go one better. Beth, looking at your chart, I can see you are an intelligent, formidable, very, very intuitive woman who's very keyed into who she is. I'm going to go one better than what Michael said and say that you already know this. You need it reinforced, I guess, and you need to be willing to do it.
Yep. I think you're exactly right.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
Great.
Be brave enough to
and
step
honestly
forward.
that makes sense that you would need that validation, one, because you got all the Leo energy, but also you've had some tough stuff. You had, I mean, when you battle with weight like you did and having a difficult marriage, there's a lot of things that are weighing on you. So give yourself a lot of credit for the fact that you've gone through some really challenging things and you're still showing up ready to find love and keep going. Like, that's super powerful. And yeah, you do have everything you need to actually get what you want. Like you've already shown that in your career and in the way you've kind of progressed in your life. So you're a powerhouse.
Yeah. Yep, that's what I see.
I totally agree.
Michael Lynn didn't stand a chance when I walked across the street.
It's interesting. Some of these charts we do, you know, people are battling addiction, people are battling low self-esteem, they're battling against external factors that will not stop in their life. So much of this chart is you're really battling this really powerful version of yourself. It's a really interesting chart to look at from that point of view. That's become this part of you that's become so powerful and so formidable. There's another part of your life that wants to be nurtured but has been left wanting as a result. So I love this chart. This chart is great. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it is. I'm sitting here looking at this sixth house and I just can't stop looking at it. I'm like, it's a lot of things going on in here. I was thinking, like, with her Leo being on that seventh house, could we take that Leo and could we say, okay, well, because they say your seventh house shows the type of person you want in a relationship. Could we take this stellium and break it down and say, like, she may want somebody with these type of qualities, fierce, someone who's different, someone who loves her for who she is, someone who is sensitive, like if you break down the Mercury, the Sun, and Cancer, that could we just break that down and say this is the type of quality she looked for? Or would that be doing too much?
No, I think you're right. And I think it's someone who's going to shake it up too with that
Yeah,
Uranus and their
with
energy
that
too. And
Uranus.
somebody who's
Yeah,
going to challenge you, but not in a
yeah,
way that's going to threaten you. Because I think once you're threatened, all your defenses are going to kick in, and they kick in pretty hard.
yeah. That's that
Um,
Libra moon.
yeah, but also all that Scorpio stuff at the top of the chart too. So you're absolutely right, Crystal. I think that's. But again, too, we're looking at all of this stuff that's happening in the sixth house. So this is how she lives. This is how her day works too. All of these things are in here, and it means somebody needs to be compatible with that. To some degree, compatibility is a two-edged word, because I think when we look for compatibility, the more we look for compatibility, the more we start to diminish compromise. We were looking for somebody who's going to tick all our boxes and light all our candles for us, while compromise means we've got to be willing to do that for somebody else too. So I take what you say, Crystal, as being a really, really powerful indicator of how that seventh house may play out. But at the same time, too, it may also give us some insight on some of the patterns we may need to overcome, in order to make ourselves more available to other people too. And that leads us right back to, do we
I
go with the
agree.
dog, or do we go with the partnership? We're going to have to find a balance in there too. Yeah.
Isn't the sixth house also acts of service?
Yes.
Yes.
That's definitely her, Jasmine. It definitely explains her to a T.
Yeah, interesting. It's kind of the first time I've seen somebody with everything on this side of the chart.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool how the moon. It's kind of cool how the moon, Crystal, is like right in between the 10th and the 6th house, and it's kind of showing how it needs to be balanced, isn't it? That's
Absolutely.
what it looks like.
Yes, ma'am.
And it's also the fulcrum between that Mercury lead planet for that bold planet and that Aquarius ascendant too. So it's doing a very, very strong balancing act right in the middle of the chart, or it's attempting to.
That's what I want. How would you say that bold chart with the Mercury starting it?
Sorry, say that again.
How would you interpret the bold chart with the Mercury starting it? What would that sound like?
Well, it all leads. It's all led by Mercury. That's communication. But we've got communication built on sensitivity, intuitive, and an instinct to protect the self. So there's armor there, and you can see how the desire to protect themselves can also lead somebody to be competitive. Sometimes the way to overcome our enemies is to be stronger than they are, to be more intimidating than they are, whether we are or
That's
not.
right.
What do they say? The best defense is a good offense.
That's
so
right.
that's built in there by design. And we've got trines running up to things that are happening up in that 10th house. So that points to that. It might suggest, Beth, that once that wrapping comes off, you may be one of them big softies. But that wrapping just happens to be made out of stainless steel. So there's a bit of work involved in order for somebody to get there. It's interesting. We haven't even touched on Chiron yet. We normally go there.
I've been
looking
looking
at
at that right there. I've been staring at that for quite some time.
Me
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. And it just kind of tells the story what she really been saying, but I wasn't sure like that, do you feel like you might have been different all your life? Maybe smart, maybe outcasted because you're different and it hurt. Was you wounded, teased, bullied? I don't know. I didn't know what to make of that.
Yep.
Every bit of that.
Every bit of it, Crystal, and therein is where the armor got formed, because you either cry or you laugh.
I could see that.
And you either let them know that they get to you, which in turn makes them happy, because an unhappy person picks on somebody.
That's right.
Or you just go about your life and say, okay, bump you. I'm not letting you rain on my parade. I'm going to keep on moving. So yes, I've seen bullies, I've seen remarks, I've seen, and you have to decide if you're going to join the party or if you're going to hide from it.
And is that where the indecisive? Do you feel indecisive, confrontational, or do you become passive aggressive, or none of the above?
I think I'm more passive aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
I will stick up for myself when need be, but if I also do not like confrontation.
Yeah, I see that Libra moon.
If there's a nice way to accomplish the same thing without a head-on confrontation, then I take that road versus confrontation. It was somebody said something a minute ago about being wrapped up, and when you unload it, there is a love bug in there. Yeah. I'm definitely hippie type, peace and love, you know. Even in dealing with students, I find that there are ways to deal with their aggressiveness or their anger and calm them back down without me joining their party. I can diffuse it.
I could see that.
You know, there's one girl I finally in my late life at 60 had to just say, okay, she was ignorant. In my 7th grade yearbook, it says, to my fat friend.
That wasn't nice.
But she was redheaded and freckled. I wished I'd written to my redheaded freckle friend. You know, children in middle school are the cruelest children that ever exist.
For sure.
We all, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, that's cruelty personified. But I've always dealt with it. I dealt with a very aggressive co-teacher. She called me actually the other day by accident, and it startled her because she called the wrong Beth. And you could hear it in her voice, but she was always number 1 and I was always number 2. And you know, that was where the passive aggressive was.
Gotcha.
In dealing with her, and she made it known that my size was part of the problem.
That's mean.
Never mind that I could go to competition and whoop her butt.
Right.
So
she wouldn't have made that effort if you were nobody.
Made it worse.
Yeah, you're obviously a challenge to her if she felt she had to say that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But the nice thing is, with your Cancer sun, you wouldn't say that. You wouldn't stoop that level. You are going to go you're going to take the high road. And that sadly makes you even more of a target sometimes for people who are insecure, because then it threatens them that you have this internal strength to not have to come back at them like that.
But you nailed me. I take the high road.
So that, but that's a struggle, because inside of you, you're thinking, oh, I'm always being nice. I'm always doing the right thing, and everybody's coming at me, and that's hard. I mean, that's a hard path to walk. And you almost have to decide that you're okay with that, you know, like that you're okay that there are bullies and there are people who are not going to accept you. That's actually your Aquarius rising is going to be able to have that freedom of, I'm going to be me no matter what, even if you're all going to kind of bully up on me and be threatened and intimidated by me. I'm still going to be me, and the me that shows up is heart-centered and actually cares about my students and my work. And so
I
think
can go to bed and I can put my head down on my pillow at night and sleep knowing I've done what is true to me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Always take that high road.
She don't take the high road. She's a Cancer sun. She rarely takes the high road, but she's a Scorpio rising.
Oh, well, that's why.
I know. I'll be like, what kind of Cancer? And I'm like, okay.
And there's a sleeping lion in there too. You know, there's a lion lurking around, and if you're going to push that lion, then you're going to get the full treatment, like, the royal treatment. I think if that comes.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Man. Yeah, but I agree with you though. I agree exactly what you're saying. I think so.
Wait, so I'm curious about the Uranus in the 6th house, how that's like manifested or how it will go.
You're asking her? Beth, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm going to say her.
Asking the group.
Beth.
Yeah, the group.
It's good that you put that, because I think of those other 4 planets, it's like a police lineup of personal planets. They're all there. So, you know, but then all of a sudden we've got Uranus jumping in there. It's like those photo bombs you see where somebody's family's on the beach and then somebody's running behind there, you know, naked or something like that.
And it's water too.
Well,
Is it water? No, it's in Leo.
it's
Yeah,
in
it's
Leo.
fire. Yeah.
Ooh, yeah. That's
And
big.
it's such a
Some
Venus
drop the mic
and
energy,
Mars.
isn't
That's a
it?
big stepper right there. Big rebellious. I
touches-
don't know. I don't know how that will play out with the stellium. I'm still working
Yeah.
through these stelliums. These
Yeah.
Well,
all
look,
that
let me,
energy in
let
one
me come
place.
back to something that you said earlier. When we talked about compromise, when we talked about you being in a relationship with somebody, and and I asked you, was there a person you felt, a version of yourself you needed to be in order to make room for other people? You did say that you needed to be softer in many areas of your life, but you did say that you didn't feel you needed to bring your armor down. That you still, do you know what I'm saying? I'm summarizing when I say this, but you shouldn't have to compromise yourself so much that you become silent. Or weak or pliable and things like that. When I look at this chart, I look at those patterns there, I look at the sensitivity in that 6th house. Your armor's there by design. You're not supposed to live without it. Okay. It's about a balancing act. It's about finding how to live a life where that armor isn't suffocating you, where there's room to breathe and there's room for other people to be a part of your life as well. So at no point are we advocating that you should become a weaker, more submissive version of yourself. Your strength is there by design.
Facts.
But having said that, I mean, we're sitting here trying to understand this Uranus and Leo. I think what the armor's also done is, see, that stellium that right there, those 3 planets in Leo are potentially volatile. We've got Mars and Uranus conjunct with Venus. I mean, that's a crime of passion right there, isn't it?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and I think if also your armor is also a container to contain that side of yourself. Maybe you're talking about there's parts of yourself that you have not opened up or expressed, or things about yourself you haven't learned yet. There may be a firecracker in there too. I think, you know, there's some energy there, and that hasn't even been explored. Other than a teacher who mistakenly speed dialed you and defensively felt they had to exert their own dominance over you before quickly making their way back to their life again. I think there's a whole side of you. I agree with you. I think there's a whole side of yourself that you've barely scratched the surface on, and I think you've contained. It's nice that it's not Scorpio, because Scorpio, once all the lid comes off, that tends to be atomic. But I think I think maybe that Uranus, just to get back to what you're saying, Jasmine, maybe that's unexplored. Other than on a personal level and a day-to-day, that can be quiet rebellion, a person who's living their life, and the way they rebel and the way they do things, the rest of the world may not see. Maybe that little dog of yours has seen sides of yourself that other people haven't too. But I think maybe we're looking at undiscovered territory there too, but there's something lurking in there. I think that scene with Tom Cruise in Risky Business, where he's sliding around the house in his socks singing old time rock and roll.
Yeah.
That might be something going on behind closed doors. I don't know. Maybe.
I clean house that way.
Yes, you're very accurate again.
I turn
Okay.
Bon Jovi up as loud as it'll go and clean house to it.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Oh, I turn my Bon Jovi up as loud as it'll go and clean house, and oh yeah, that side's there.
Okay.
Between Venus and Mars, and it wants to come out, but the other 2 planets are kind of keeping it at bay, I think, because you know, like she said, she grew up very traditional. Things are, yes, this is a small town, things are a certain way, everybody knows everybody, so she doesn't want to show her wild side, even though she has one, and it is wild, let me tell you, but she doesn't want to put herself out there in that sense, but she's got it, and it is unexplored, and maybe she could integrate Uranus when she's doing her balancing act, creating her 3rd person, or the person that she's going to use, her mask or her game face, the person she's going to use when she goes out to meet people, you know, the balanced individual. Maybe she can incorporate a little bit of that fun Beth in there, and let herself, give herself permission to actually be herself and be a little rebellious, because I mean, you know, you only live once, right?
Well,
Mhm.
I did it when I first was widowed and moved to a different city. When I retired and moved back home to be around my mom, which was the reason I moved to here versus somewhere else. You know, I had to kind of come back into who I grew up as. But when I was in Savannah, Georgia, oh yes, my little wild side came out. It was there.
Well, let's look at this if it was another life, if life had treated you a different way when you first grew up, and you had been a different person. You've got enough in that sixth house to be formidable. And in the seventh house, the way love and relationships may have expressed themselves, if you had been focused on that fire energy and that Scorpio energy, you could have been the person who was in relationships and just rolled right over the top of other people and moved on.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
could have been a completely different life. And that's what I'm saying, that armor and those experiences and all of those things there, they're all there by design. That's to prevent that sort of experience from happening, I guess. That's the way I look at it. Again, I'm looking at it esoterically from the point of view that we've come in here to learn lessons in this lifetime, how to not be that person. Because
And I
you
see
could have been
people like
formidable. Sorry?
the person that says I intimidated her, she is that
Yeah.
type of person, and you know she does it to
You're
it's
just off.
her
Sorry,
program.
you're just off this. Can you just come in a
I'm
bit? That's
sorry.
all we can hear. That's all right.
The girl that I was saying, you know, that I wanted to make the comments, etc., that I worked with, she uses that in the way you were describing just then, that ugly rollover people. And I would step back, like I said, she's number one, I'm number two. Number two takes care of the people that she rolls over. Does that make
Mhm.
any sense?
Mhm.
And I look at that and I just, for me, it's distasteful to roll over somebody.
Yeah.
I'm very thankful I'm cut out the way I'm cut out as opposed to that, because I just, there's no time in this life to be ugly to someone else or to cause that. And I guess that's the Cancer in me speaking.
Yes, yes.
Would that
But I
also
think
be
that's right.
the Libra ninth house?
Mhm.
Yeah, it's the fulcrum of the whole chart, but that's literally acting as a balancing act, a scale on this chart. It's right in the middle, and it's
Mhm.
got this it's got this powerful energy to balance. And somehow, right in the middle of all of that, it's managed to create this. Well, I'm tempted to say softer kind of person, but then I keep getting these nuggets of information that tell me maybe that's not who I'm dealing with. So, um, you know what I'm saying? Um, it's working overtime. Let's put it that way. But yes, I agree. Absolutely, Jasmine.
I've never fit the book in anything.
Wait, what was that? You never.
I never fit the book. I mean, you can't find, you know, you can't go to a book and look it up and say, oh yeah, there she is right there. It's always
Of course not.
pieces put together on patchwork.
Isn't that an Aquarius thing? That
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, with Aquarius rising and a Cancer sun and then a Libra moon. I mean,
Mhm.
that's a lot of different energy. So no, you would not fit any one particular book. It's like, and like Damien said, it's like there's multiple people inside your chart,
Yeah.
and which is kind of neat because it's like you get to kind of pick who you're going to be going forward.
Having said that, though, it doesn't feel like a compartmentalized chart. There's some people, you know, they create ambassadors, they create roles. This all feels genuine. So whatever version of yourself you get, it's genuine. It's not a curated personality that's designed to handle other people. And that's what's really interesting to me. We've getting back to this first house, looking at Chiron, let's call it the expectation of pain. We've got squares running up to the north node and the south node. So whatever's happening in your life, this whole journey that you're taking, it's all right here, right now. There's no progression until this
Mhm.
puzzle is solved, I guess, at least.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Some people, when you look at their chart and you look at it, it reads like an epic journey. It's got a chapter 1, a chapter 2, all of that sort of stuff. This is a very right here, right now kind of chart. You've been brought into this world to solve a particular puzzle.
Yeah, it's reading like a storybook almost. I get what you're
Yeah,
saying.
yeah.
hmm
So, and that's where your energy is going. And you've invested your energy into certain areas of your life, and now you're ready to move it into other areas.
hmm
So,
Bingo.
yeah.
Do you have a hard time with letting things go?
Sometimes, yeah. I think if I'm honest with myself, yes.
I just see a lot of
Not
energy,
anger so much, but
a
yeah.
lot of
She's
fixing.
still mad about Crystal. She's still mad about. She can still be angry about some things that her sister did when they were little. So she has a
Not me so much as my sister.
well, her sister's,
And I
but
see
they're
it fourth house
both.
too.
Yeah.
Thinking it has something to do with home.
Yeah, it's
more
the way she
home,
was
yeah.
raised, I think.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
I'm still mad at my husband because he put me in bankruptcy and I'm
hmm
getting out of there. Once I'll ride by the cemetery and yell at him every once in a while. But when I think I'm bringing that to a climax, like point, I'm getting it taken care of, and when that's taken care of, I can let it go.
I
So
get
yeah,
it.
I do hold on to things. I
Mhm.
try not to, but yeah, I do. If I'm
Mhm.
honest,
Yeah,
and I'm
looks like.
probably honest with you guys. So
Mm-hmm. Yep, I see that.
Did you and your sister fight a lot?
um, yeah, she's very. I'm very outgoing and a people person, and she's very introspective. And she was. I was a reader.
Sorry,
I
we
was
can't hear
happy.
you again. Could you either maybe shift that? That's it. Yeah.
I was happiest when I was inside with a book and reading, or I was with a group. And she was always business as usual. She wanted to be outside riding a bike, and she, I don't know how to explain her exactly, but she has different expectations of life. And she used to call me, she told me one time, I went to college to get a degree to get a profession. You went to college to play. So that's a good highlight of the difference of the two of us. She's an RN, she's a hospice nurse, and she's not a people person. She's a very introverted person. And that comes from, I see, it comes from her experiences. There again, another fat child with it affecting them differently. And she was also a child of immigration here in Georgia, and that was hard on a fat child with red hair. She caught it from every side, but yes, we don't get along in that sense. And I get mad and feel like she's trying to be the boss of me. So yeah, we fight.
But they're very close. Let me be clear. They're very, very, very close.
Yeah. I almost died last year, and she was right by my side. She was literally having to pick me up out of the chair and move me. And she was there for me, and I would be there for her. But we have our times, and that's sibling. And my mom left me in charge of her, so I know I have to take care of her. So, and I do. I call her at 4 o'clock every morning, get her up. But that's it's being a sister, and I wish I could make her happier with herself, but that's not going to happen. It's 65 years of her. Although she's next up on Michael Lynn's. I'm gonna give her to Michael Lynn and see what Michael Lynn can do with her. But we are, I would say, one of us is hot and one of us is cold. Good way of describing us.
Okay.
Kind of total opposites.
It's funny
Okay.
that one of the first things we talked about was both you and your sister and your mother are quite relaxed about spirituality and esotericism, which, for my understanding of Georgia, is quite interesting. So it's funny that that's a common ground that you can all meet on.
And she got it all started. And I think it has to do with her occupation and the things that she sees.
Yeah.
Because she started out as an emergency room nurse and progressed through travel nursing. And now, like I said, at 65, she's a home hospice nurse. And that is a tough, tough job.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it. Give me a teenager mouthing off. I'll take them any day.
Sure.
But I have to understand where she's coming from. And I think it falls to me to be the understanding sister. To understand it there again, I guess it's my cancer. Understanding where she's coming from, what she deals with, what she needs in terms of somebody that she can just, talk.
Well, you're absolutely right. Yeah. Sorry, just to jump in there, just to reinforce that. I mean, the ruler of your fourth house, the house of family, is Venus, which is right up in the middle of that sixth house stuff. So it's to be there for her for the day-to-day stuff, not the family sentimental stuff. It's the day-to-day supportive part of, that's what your relationship's built on. Yeah.
So I'm following right in the right path there, I think. And she is mine. And
You said one of y'all was bossy?
Me. Well, I tell you, she thinks that I can read her mind. She's a typical emergency room supervising nurse, and I'm the CNA or the LPN that's supposed to read the boss's mind and know what instrument to handle. Because she's done it for so long by herself. She's not married. She never married. She lived with my mom the last 10 years of mom's life. And, she's just all about the work. And like I said, she is a typical supervisory nurse,
I wonder if this is looking like with this Aries on your third house cusp, and then your Mars in Leo, with Leo being bossy, and then it's in the house of careers, and well, not careers, but daily work and routine and the way you service others. So when the Aries, I think, would rule the siblings and stuff, and this Mars would, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what I was thinking.
Can I ask another question? If I'm getting too personal, do you have children?
I never was blessed with children. I wanted children. He was ambivalent. I have thousands of children, but they're children I taught. And that's why I started teaching, actually, because when it just finally was down to brass tacks, and we couldn't have kids, I thought, what better way to take care of things and leave a little bit of me than to teach. And I taught high school for 30 years.
Awesome.
And I like the
I
big
wonder
guys.
if that would be the Gemini in the fifth house with duality. So you got to have variety. Usually variety where Gemini is, but I believe Gemini is also a barren sign. If I'm not too familiar with that just yet. But I could see you dealing with a bunch of different children with Gemini being on the fifth house cusp. I thought maybe you had twins or something.
No, but my mom was a twin. And I would have been the twin bearer. It would have fallen to me probably if I had had children. Mama was a twin, and there were twins on two sides of her family also.
Oh, that's it's right by the fourth house. Okay.
God, that's well spotted, Crystal.
Say that again, Damon.
That's well spotted.
Oh, thank you.
Good call.
Very cool.
Okay.
Very.
Thanks. I learned from the best.
I have thousands of kids.
That also like the Saturn, Sagittarius, like Jupiter, like teaching.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Revolutionary,
I
but
found my
still following the
calling.
program. Isn't it a nice balancing act?
Excuse me.
I love too how we've got
My
all this sensitivity in the sixth house, but the three planets that are feeding that Saturn that you're talking about right up there, they're all fire planets. So whatever we've learned in our shell, whatever we've learned in our own protective armor, we send it all up into our career, you know?
Mm-hmm.
and my first career was not education. Yeah, I was a buyer, assistant buyer for a large department store in the States. It turned into Macy's, but it was Riches and it was an Atlanta company. And I was in the buying office. I worked my way into the buying office and was there for 5 years.
Okay.
And then decided to go back to teach because to me, that first career had it was a job,
Yeah.
period. I wasn't getting from it what I needed. And went back, went through school, worked my way through school, and have all but my PhD. I didn't finish because I lost my husband right around that time. But my sense of worth, my love, my everything was that teaching job. That was when I moved from the buying office to the classroom is where I found me.
That's cute because Mercury is in Cancer.
Mm. Oh yeah. Yeah, good call. Mm-hmm. And
And she
would
said,
the
so
ninth
she
house
fits
be
it.
teaching? I'm sorry.
Yes, it would be, Crystal.
Okay, so we say the night. Oh, and the moon is in the eighth house. So that's like a deep connection with teaching or something. Would you say that?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Or am I jumping out the window?
I'm still teaching.
Well,
No, like I'm saying, like is it like a deep connection? Like because we got Libra in the ninth house. Hold on, where was I at? I was going somewhere with this.
Wait, I see it because ninth house
And
is
then the
like
moon.
teaching.
Teaching
Yeah.
university, but also too, if we're teaching at a school or something, we're looking at the third house, so that
Oh, okay.
Mars would also be a factor. Teaching at a
The
local
ninth house,
level.
the ninth house is higher
Oh,
education.
Yeah.
Yes.
got
She's done all
like
that. She said.
philosophy.
I was
Would it be
all
like
but my doctorate. Yeah, I had it almost done. I just liked the book.
got you?
Wait, do you teach like just like a certain like subject, or do you teach like all subjects?
Well, now I teach all subjects because I substitute. So if they need me in home ec, I go there. If they need me in a math class, I go there. When I
Oh,
taught marketing education, which is a marketing management course for high schoolers. And I did what they call work-based learning, which was kids on the job.
got you.
But nowadays, it's whatever somebody's out. I just fill their little spot and keep going.
Would that
Got
also
you.
be because of Mercury?
Mercury and the sun sitting right on top of each other. Pretty much.
Yeah, like teaching multiple subjects, would that be because of Mercury?
Could
Yeah,
be. It could also be
probably.
a progression, I think, just a career progression to where you are now. I
Mm-hmm.
think Mercury is going to be in everything. It's a lead
Yeah.
planet on her bowl chart, so I think Mercury is going to put its stamp on everything that's happening in her life.
Yeah, I was thinking more like Leo Rouge children. In the third, and Mars is in Leo, so I was thinking that could have been a teaching as well.
Sure.
Also, I see the Cancer in the sun though.
Yeah.
I see a lot of teaching on here actually. Now that you saying that, so what would the Saturn be in Jupiter? I mean, in Sagittarius. Would that? I mean, was your husband older? What are we doing with the Saturn? Isn't that like an older person, and it's connected to the relationships? Does that have anything to do with that, or?
He was 2 years older than I was, but that's not really older.
You
Yeah,
got a
that's not
square
really.
between that seventh house and that Saturn up the top of the chart as well.
Yeah.
So it may or may not be a factor. It probably wouldn't be.
Gotcha.
I think I'm going to pull it in now, guys. I think we're sort of wandering a bit.
Okay.
But I think we've ticked all the main boxes that we set out to objectively with this chart. How do you feel we went, Beth?
I think you nailed me very much so, but you also gave me a lot of food for thought and
Right.
looking at where I'm at, where I want to go. But what you
That's
were
great.
saying about me and my personality, pretty much right on it.
Good.
And again, too, just to reinforce what I said before, I think you already know this, but you're getting external feedback on something internally you've already suspected. So
Yes.
you all the ingredients are there. I think you know yourself pretty well. Yeah. But it's been an amazing chart. Like I said, there's some real differences in this chart for other ones that we've seen and worked with before. And a lot of it is the immediacy of it. It's right here, right now kind of chart. It's a genuine chart. There's no, everything in this is like you say, what you see is what you get. There's nothing hidden. There's no compartmentalization. There are no personalities that have been created to handle particular areas of your life or things like that. I think there's parts of your life you're sensitive and you've held on to and you've guarded, but they've all in their own way contributed to making the rest of your life better in other ways. But I think it's also maybe prevented you from having the kind of relationship that you may want to have. I don't know if you were ever really, based on what you've said and what I've seen and what we've talked about in this, I don't know if you ever were perhaps ready in your life to explore relationships deeper until now. I think, again, that word armor, I think your armor has been so formidable. And you've, again, too, we've seen you when pressed, you're competitive and you'll come back hard. And I think maybe there's been a hypervigilance in your life for a long time that may have prevented you from being as vulnerable as you need to be in order to have a loving and sharing relationship. But I think maybe everything in your life has prepared you to explore it at a deeper level now, because you know which parts of yourself are too strong. You know which parts of yourself need to be nurtured and explored. And you know, you've lived a life and you've had experiences, and you're so intelligent. I can see that in this chart, that you're able to do the internal work and figure out and understand your experiences and make decisions based on that. So, and again, too, like Michelle said, never give up on love. You've never, you still haven't met all the people who are going to love you. So, and I think if you are ready for a relationship now and you're willing to do the work, I think you will have the type of relationship now that you never could have had in an earlier part of your life. Earlier version of yourself would never have been ready for it.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Real good point.
So that may have just been the way it's all played out. And the fact that you're looking now, that everything seems to be changing and shifting, seems to suggest like we've got squares to your north and south node from Chiron, and where you've expected to be hurt. Maybe those wounds don't hurt as much anymore. Maybe you're more open and you're more outside this pattern. You've been locked in for a long time and you're ready to explore other things. So that's a good sign.
Very cool.
We're incredibly self-regulating in that way. We know what's right for us and what's not, even when we don't. So does anybody want to add to that? Anybody wants to summarize?
Nope.
I guess I just have one little tip, just because I know she only has one little bit of earth. And so with someone who has your Cancer energy, you probably want to make sure that you keep yourself grounded, and activities that can do that are things like, going out for walks, spending time in nature. I think that will help you, especially even if you do start dating, staying grounded when you're meeting new people, and staying kind of connected to your true self. That's going to be, I think, really helpful.
I second that. Absolutely.
I third that.
Right. The
And maybe you should
wins.
sign of the person you're interested in. Check the moon. Make sure
Yeah.
your moon is compatible.
Yes.
You know,
Well, I
it's-
have my helper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
she's pretty
My moon
good.
won't let you go wrong.
Yeah.
You've got one Earth planet on your whole chart, and it's Jupiter, which is rewards, it's growth, it's expansion, it's luck. So everything that was said from Michelle about being grounded and bringing that energy into your life is always going to be rewarding for you. It's always going to pay dividends. So yeah, she's absolutely right in that regard. Yeah.
Very good. I thank all of you. This has been
Yes,
so
ma'am.
enlightening. This has been great.
For us
Awesome.
too. Thank you.
Very, very much for your input.
Absolute
Thank
pleasure
you.
to work with. It's been wonderful. The one thing we say to everybody who does this, if in a year you want to come back, even 6 months, if there are changes happening in your life, just let Michael and know. We'd be more than happy to do this again, just to see where you're at and sound off and debrief and explore the waters from that point. So
Awesome.
keep that in mind. It's an open door, you know, anytime you're more than welcome. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. It's been an absolute pleasure today.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, guys.
sharing yourself so generously.
Buddy.
Oh, thank you.
What I'm going to do is we've been recording this, so I'm going to create a copy of this and I'll send this up to Michaelin so she can get a copy to you. And
That's great. Thank
yeah,
you so
yeah,
much,
you'll have
because I
copy
know
on
I
hand.
missed things that I would like to go
it's
back
a
and
lot.
listen
It's a
to.
lot. Everybody here, we're so different in the way that we interpret and we see things. So we're going to be coming at the same data in completely different ways. You know, but that's wonderful. It gives you a more rounded overview, a rounded picture of what you're working with and who you are and what we see, most importantly, too. Okay. Well, look, thank you, everybody. Thank you very much for today. It's been wonderful. I'm going to stop recording now, but you're welcome to stick around if you want to chat a little bit after. Okay.
Stephen, can I just ask, you mentioned that there were placements in the 6th house that represented her armor, and I'm just curious, like, is it the Uranus, or is it just that all of the energy is kind of fighting each other?
It's the planets. Sorry, the signs. Cancer has some of the most formidable armor out of any of the signs.
Right,
and
the shell.
Leo is probably the most sensitive. It's certainly the most sensitive of the fire signs, but it's an incredibly sensitive sign too. It's funny, you know what? I have these assignments for the Udemy courses, and when people do the first one where they go through and explore their types, so many Leos. When I asked the second question, which is, do you feel energy of different signs? So many Leos identify with Cancer. They think that they must have a powerful Cancer somewhere on the chart or something like that. Every time I look at that, I think it's the sensitivity. I'm a Leo moon. So that Leo often expresses itself as Cancer on a personal level. What everybody else is seeing compared to what the person themselves are internalizing can be so different. Leos take criticism so poorly, and they tend to come back so hard when they get it. So, like I said in the assignments, when somebody answers Leo in the first question, generally I expect to see Cancer come in the second. It's almost a given now.
That's wild. So you're saying that Leo shows, like, identifies as the most sensitive?
Hypersensitivity is one of the qualities of Leo.
Okay.
They tend to it comes with the grandiose personality too, but they have they put so much energy into building this image about themselves that they take attacks against that self so poorly. And what they perceive as being attacks often aren't. You know, it's hypersensitivity. They think people are criticizing them. They don't. I know I've got it. My wife's.
I do too. Well, I'm asking. Yeah, I'm a Leo sun with a Cancer rising. So you are talking to you, but I'd never heard it explained like that. That's why I'm glad I asked this question.
Preaching to the choir. Yeah.
Yeah, you're defining But again, nobody ever says that. I don't think
Sure,
anybody ever talks about
sure.
Leo
But
about
you
this.
know, when we talk about Leo, we're generally talking about us observing Leo in the wild. I mean,
Right.
we're not talking about what Leo's
In the
experiencing
wild.
on a personal level, because Leo does such a
Right.
good job of being observed. We don't often question what's actually going on underneath, and that in itself is a layer of armor. You know,
Yeah.
they're curators. They create these grandiose personalities and things like that, but they're often, it's like a Wizard of Oz thing going on. There's this little man behind the
Mm,
screen at the end of it all, who's
mm.
just built this entire world, this universe around him in order to disguise that. You
It's
know,
so
Wow.
interesting that you bring that up, Damien, because 2 days ago when the moon was in Pisces, I spoke with one of our other group members, but I watched The Wizard of Oz. We were just talking about taking it easy for the day and just maybe watching a movie, and she was going to watch Alice in Wonderland. And I said, I think I'll watch The Wizard of Oz. And as you guys are talking about Leo, it brings to mind the actual lion in The Wizard of Oz and how
yeah,
he's always he took everything so personally, but he also was, so fierce acting and that's
Acting.
yes, acting. And that just brings it all together. And it's so cool that you bring that up. And you and I did not discuss this beforehand. So that
Yeah,
it's just that just validates everything that we're doing here. For me, it's just another God wink.
predators roar to make the prey react. You know, that's the whole reason that they roar. At the end of the day, the lion's roar is to make the prey run or cower, you know, do want to fight or flight, you know, to drive it into that experience and things like that. At the end of the day, though, the roar really doesn't say much about the lion itself, does it? We don't know the lion as a being, as a person, as a personality.
absolutely.
We just know what its tools are to get what it wants, you know. Like I said, when I get those assignments, that identifying as Cancer is such a common thread with Leos. It's almost 100%. It must be. It's so high up on that. So
Wow.
that's where I got
Yeah.
challenged. Yeah.
Thank you
I'm
for
a Leo
that.
sun and a Leo rising, and my sister always
Oh,
tells me I'm
wow.
sensitive. I've never been told I was sensitive, but my sister tells me I'm sensitive, very sensitive. And I used to take offense to everything. I'm learning now not to take things personal, but it took me a while to get there. So,
Same.
yeah, I can see the sensitivity now. I couldn't see it before. I thought she was crazy when she told me I was sensitive.
Well, you know, sensitivity we associate with crying, not a punch in the mouth.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So, but it's coming from the same place, isn't it? You know?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Anyway,
This was great.
no worries. I'm going to
Yeah,
wrap
thank
up this
you.
recording. Like I said, if anybody wants to stick around, they're quite welcome to. Thanks for a lovely session, everybody.